Adrienne Wanamaker here at Brush Trowel. We sell products and we teach people how to use textures such as lime plasters, acrylics, and concrete finishes. Today I'm going to show you how to use a Piatto color and make it into a Grassello finish. And this is a very common scenario that we get with designers. They've come in and picked out sample boards. They love this color, but they want this kind of finish. The difference between the finishes that you might not be able to see on the video is that this is a really matte, heavier aggregate and kind of a little bit pittier finish, and this is a smoother, more shiny, a little bit more refined finish. So let's begin with our sample boards. This is one that I've chosen only because it has some little doohickeys on it and some imperfections, and I really wanted to show how to deal with the Grassello when you're putting it on, because it does need a level 5 finish. In this, in preparation, I would definitely do maybe a little bit darker tinted or same tint micro primer to put it on, but I really wanted to show how that's going to show, and especially in the video, I'll show through a bit. But if I saw any imperfections, I do take my trowel and scrape off any of the high raised areas. And then when it does, I mean, it's not very often, but you'll get a spot where you can just feel it has a roughness. So just take a little bit of sandpaper and smooth it out, and it just makes it for just the finish to be that much nicer. And what we've done is we've taken the Grassello and we have tinted it into this Rainy Day Blue. And I love to apply my plasters, and pretty much all of them now. I've become just the Japanese trowel person. I like them because of the size, I like the flexibility, and I like how easy it is to hold them. They have you don't have to hold them so tight, and it's got a really big sweet spot on it, as opposed to the stiffer trowels tend to have, you're more just on that edge. So that's just a personal preference. We have both sizes. We also have the pointed ones, but these two are the ones that I really enjoy using for putting on the textures. So basically when we start on a sample board is I definitely work into my edges first, and I'll get it so that I've got it all along the edge of my trowel, so that this is a way of just sort of practicing, of setting into your corners, because you'll definitely want to work diagonally across a wall. But this is where you can see some of those imperfects showing up in the micro primer. So once I get a space covered, I go back with this trowel and lightly drift on it. And on the base coat, what I will do is make it so that I have the pounce marks, and these will telegraph through as opposed to those inorganic lines. We'll get a little bit more of an organic finish. And we still knock them down, but it'll be more of a lacing that transfers through as opposed to some of the hard edges. Then what we're going to do is we're going to let this dry, and we'll come in and put our second coat on. So the first coat is dried, and what you can see is a little bit of the lacing in here where we were trying to cover up some of the micro primer issues, and those will just hopefully telegraph through on the second coat, and also I'll make them again on the second coat. The one thing about this finish is that you can burnish it to be super polished, or you can leave it just a smidget mottled and matte. and add some of your own. I tend to be, because I'm on the West Coast, I tend to keep it a little bit more matte. I know that on the East Coast and in the South, they tend to like a higher sheen. So it just sort of depends on your region, but this is very capable of going to a super high sheen. Again, I will start on my edges and in my corners, but I start with a lot less because I definitely want to just work in small spaces. And then I also tend to work dry into wet and diagonally. And the thing that I like about the Japanese trowel is you can lightly drop it and it'll pull up you'll get the lacing marks. And I always do just add in a couple, just because people tend to like that look on the board. And then we're going to let it set up for a little bit, and then we'll come back and burnish it, which will be smoothing it, closing out the pores, and creating a little bit of sheen. So now the sample board is set up, and I call it giraffe spots, which is where it's still wet and dry in the areas. And I just take my trowel, which is all clean, and I basically run it on a slide. Which you can see how it'll pull up the darker spots. But a slide is where you slide the blade across, so it's going like this, as opposed to when you're applying, you go straight across. So there's straight across, and then there's a slide where you take your angle and just move it up the wall. When you're burnishing, you want to make sure that you do the edges a little bit more, because every time you hit the edge and go to the center gets hit. But these only get hit once. Whereas if you do, this is one time, this gets hit once, this gets hit once, and this is twice. So this will be much more movement in the middle. So you're really going to want to do a little bit of your edges. And this is basically for sample boards, but also on your walls, you're going to want to get in and do the edges as much as you've done the center of the wall. And you can kind of see sometimes on your sample boards where you'll have a raise of the tape, it will have a little bit of difficulty getting in there. So when you're finished with it, you can take the board and slightly move it around and see how much of a sheen you get. So really, when you're looking at a wall, it's really good to have a light so that you can work up and down the wall and make sure you've got the same sheen. I can see down here, because it's a little bit more dry, it's a little bit more flat. So you just work it a little bit more and get a little bit more sheen. And then when you're finished with your sample board, you get to pull the tape and you'll have a perfect edge. So here is our finished sample board, Rainy Day Blue in the Grassello. And if we compare it up here to the Rainy Day Blue in the Piatto, it's a little bit crisper, got a little bit more sheen, but it basically is the same kind of finish. So if you need help with color consultation or color mixing or color matching with your plasters, we are happy to help you here at Brush and Trowel.